what's your take on that?
I think, like I said, like a lot of my firefighter comrades, they are on TRT. They took the shortcut route out. Now, I think that absolutely there is a place for TRT or hormone replacement therapy. I think it's one of the very few actual pharmaceutical products that actually does anything that it's supposed to do, that actually works. With very, very little on the side effects side, if you don't abuse it, you know what I mean? Like if you're just taking a therapeutic dose of TRT, you're really not going to have side effects for most people. I would say I felt absolutely nothing negative when I was on therapeutic TRT, but I would obviously, as you would agree, I would want people to troubleshoot what's going on in their life first and see if that doesn't fix the problem before they jump right to TRT. People jump right to TRT because they don't want to do that. They don't want to get rid of all the crap food that they're addicted to, that they're eating. That's basically that's the foundation right there, like what they're eating. What they're eating is destroying their testosterone. They're drinking lots of beer or alcohol. They're eating lots of grains and seed oils and inflammatory, substances. I have to always stop myself before I call these things food, because it's not food.
And we are live. Welcome to another episode of the Carnivore Evolution Podcast. Stephen, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How y'all doing?
And Victoria, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Hope you are too.
Okay, so we have a few topics that we need to speak about, guys. So as we know, TRT is massive in the industry at the moment. It seems like everybody's taking it at the moment, and we're also hearing that I heard from two sources this week that if you eat an awful lot of fat, this won't actually help. This won't actually make you get fat. And recently we saw an article by Nick Norwitz. He actually came out with this himself. He actually experimented this on himself. So This is the reason why I wanted to get yourselves on to have a conversation on this. So we're going to speak everything about TRT because Stephen has a little bit of experience in this. I have a little bit of experience in this myself. So we're going to go from there. So Stephen, let's take it away. You were saying to me in the past that you were on TRT before, weren't you?
Yes. For about a year and a half.
Okay, and why did you feel like you needed to take it in the first place?
So I had entered into competitive bodybuilding, and in my area, in my market at least, there was only one show a year that was actually natural, and there's probably a dozen shows that were what we call the NPC, the National Physique Committee, that are not natural shows. So I was impressive in my physique, but as far as like the people I would be competing against, not so much, because they were on performance enhancing drugs. So I started just taking it as a supplement, as a performance enhancing drug, not because I felt like I needed it or anything. I felt fine at that point. I actually started taking it right about the same time, maybe a little bit after, or maybe a little bit before. I don't remember, but right at around the same time, I actually converted over from keto to full carnivore. So, and I had been keto for 5 years before that, and I was perfectly fine. I was in my late 40s at that time. I was perfectly fine. I didn't need it from a health perspective. I just wanted to use it because it gave me a little bit of a boost to get me up, to level me up into the same league as some of the people I would be competing against. So I did that for a year and a half, and then upon like watching a Bart K video, I decided that it was just something that at 50 years old, I think I was 50 when I quit it. I decided that it just wasn't something that at my age, because what was I going to do? Am I going to get my pro card and compete in Olympia? No. And barring that, it's just a really, really super expensive hobby, and it's not very optimal for health. Even if you don't do PEDs, it's not really a terribly healthy way to live, especially when you're in contest prep and that peak week where you got to do all kinds of ridiculous stuff to give the image of being full and shredded. It's just not very terribly good. So I quit in August of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've been off it ever since, and I'm perfectly fine. So it's been a good experience.
Okay, so you've been on. Oh, sorry for interrupting you. So you've been on both. Sorry for interrupting you. So you've been on both sides, Stephen. You're doing a carnivore diet now, and you've done TRT in the past.
Mm-hmm.
What was the difference? Like, I'm sure on both of them you felt amazing, but what was the difference?
The main difference was just you can just tell that the excess testosterone is hitting your androgen receptors, especially in your shoulders. Your shoulders have a lot more pop to them. Like when I look at old pictures of my physique when I was on TRT, like you could just see the pop in the shoulders is very, very obvious. That's the most obvious. My strength was probably a little bit heavier, a little higher, but not terribly much so. But again, I was most of the time, except at deep in contest prep, I was taking therapeutic doses. So I was basically on like TRT. And then I jacked the dose up as closer to contest, time, because I was eating a lot less. So I was kind of partially compensating for that by taking more drugs. It was mostly just a pop in the shoulders. That's when I can always tell, when they have these debates over whether someone's natty or not, natty being natural, like you could just look in their shoulders and be like, that guy's on TRT at least. I didn't really feel a terrible, like I said, I wasn't like hypogonad. Like there's people who are hypogonad. I have a lot of people who are hypogonad on my fire department, and they take TRT and it brings them back to life, which is fine. I would prefer that they clean their lifestyles up and see if they can bring themselves back to life that way. They're kind of just putting a Band-Aid on their issues, but it does work in that way. But I wasn't hypogonad before, so I didn't really feel like a massive explosion in vitality and energy from that. It was just mostly an appearance thing.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you two quick questions. Is it true, because I'm not really sure about this, is it true that your natural testosterone drops while you're on TRT? And then when it comes to TRT itself, I'll just answer that question first, and I'll ask you the second question.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I'm not a big data person. Like Richard Smith gets blood tests all the time, so you can compare and contrast. I never did like a previous, I didn't get my blood work before I got on TRT, so I don't know what my baseline testosterone levels were before I got on TRT. I know it was through the roof. Like the first time I got a blood test done in July of 2023, a few months after I started taking it, a few months after I went carnivore, it was like I think the total testosterone on the scale only goes up to 1,500, and I was off the charts. I was above 1,500. So I don't know what happens for what's supposed to happen after you go off TRT, because I have no frame of reference. I do know that I was a little bit worried about that happening when I went off TRT. So I went off TRT in August of 24, and then I got a blood test done. I got blood work done in probably like October of 24, and my total testosterone was. One thing you have to understand too, when I can get into this like really in detail if you want. I think it's important, but these blood markers, these blood tests are totally arbitrary. There's like the normative ranges on your blood work is like you always have to ask the question according to who, on the basis of what, because
exactly, yeah,
there's no optimal range that they have no idea what the optimal range is, and it's completely contextual and nuanced. So when I got my blood work done in October, a couple months after I dropped TRT, my total testosterone was low normal, and my free testosterone was a little bit low. But like that people troll Dr. Sean Baker all the time. Like, oh, your testosterone's low. I haven't actually seen his testosterone, but allegedly he has low testosterone. The guy's an absolute unit.
Mm-hmm.
He's breaking world records. And do you think he has low testosterone? Like, do you think his testosterone is an issue? No. And there's so many.
Same with Dr. Shafee. Look at Dr. Shafee. He looks incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, and we were talking. You all were talking about before we went live about like T3 levels and everything. It's so contextual, and I've seen so many like the carnivore doctor, I think it was, or the carnivore nurse, Lisa, I think her name is. She quit carnivore because her T3 levels were low, and I'm like, and according to who, on the basis of what? Like,
exactly.
She quit carnivore because some doctor scared the crap out of her. And there was no reason to be scared. That she didn't feel bad, or she just some numbers on a piece of paper freaked her out. So the second time, like I said, I got my blood work done, and my total testosterone was low normal, and my free testosterone was below. They called it below normal, or below low normal, or something like that. But I feel fine. Like I'm not like when you look at symptoms of hypogonadism, I don't have it. You know what I mean? I'm a firefighter. I train 4 to 6 days a week in the gym, and then I train as a firefighter every week. I have plenty of energy. I have plenty of vitality, plenty of strength. You know what I mean? Like I'm not lacking in energy. So, and all of the things that are supposed to come with low testosterone. So, there's a contextual aspect of your blood work that you have to take into consideration. And, and it's a shame because all of us in this sphere, we wouldn't be carnivore if we didn't know that there really isn't any causal relationship between cholesterol or your lipid panel and heart disease. So the same people who are telling you your cholesterol or your LDL is too high, that you laugh at them, they're telling you your T3 is too low or whatever, or your testosterone is too low. And you're like, oh my God, you're freaking out about it. Like, instead of being like, like according to who, on the basis of what? Do you have symptoms? If you don't have symptoms, if you're supposed to be hypogonad, hypogonad meaning your testosterone's low, then then check the symptoms. Do I have those? No. All right, you're probably fine. So, the second test I got, my testosterone was a little bit on the low side, but again, I don't feel that way. You know what I mean? Like I had a blood test done last week. And, my total testosterone improved slightly. But, like the number, like I could probably, if I could afford it, I could probably do a blood panel every day of the week for 7 days and get completely different numbers.
Yeah.
Because like, especially with my LDL, of the 3 tests I've taken since I've been carnivore, literally nothing has changed, except I was on TRT when I got my first blood panel done. So when I got my first blood panel done, my LDL was 270. And he was freaking out. He's like, we got to get you off the meat and eggs, or we got to put you on a statin. And I'm like, you're fired. Maybe I can do a video saying that TRT causes high LDL or something. But but then my second blood panel, like a year later, probably a little bit more than a year later, my LDL was 170. So it dropped like 100. And then the one I had a few months ago, my LDL was 107, and absolutely nothing changed about my life. I eat the same things every day. I'm not one of those people that has a variety in their carnivore diet. I eat ground beef, eggs, and butter every day, and almost nothing else. So, and they're completely different readings. What do they mean? Nobody knows.
Exactly. So, I'm going to give my take on this, because this is where I am on this, right? So we know that when it comes to losing weight, we can use the GLP-1 injection, correct? The problem is we could, but is it the best? But that's what I'm saying. Is it the best solution? We know we can build muscle taking TRT, but again, is it the right option? You know what I mean? Yeah. When it comes to women's health, we know HRT can be a valuable tool, but is it the best option? You know what I mean? Peptides are making a big thing it's huge at the moment. But again, I would ask the question again, is this the best solution? Now, the reason why I mention this is because nobody is talking about what you're eating.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, that's the fundamental problem right here. Okay, you're taking all these injections. Okay, you're telling me how amazing these are, but I want to know what your diet's like. I want to know what your diet's like. And then when you hear what the diet is like, it's like, well, do you not realize that this diet that you're on is shit? It's shit. It's really, really bad. And they're like, what do you mean I'm eating healthy? I'm saying it's not. This is the reason why your testosterone is low. This is the reason why you're struggling. Do you not realize that if you're walking around and you look amazing, you have a six-pack, but you don't feel good, you know something in the background that you don't feel good. Do you honestly think that's optimal health? Do you honestly think that the only way to improve this is to go on TRT? I'm asking these people these questions. People that are in the carnivore community, I'm asking these people these questions, and they can't get back to me because they can't give me an answer. They just can't. They know fully well they're doing wrong, which leads me on to the other question I was going to ask you. Do you think doing this is a form of cheating?
Well, if you're
like when I say cheating, I mean cheating to look a certain way.
In the bodybuilding sphere, no. Because I mean, if TRT is cheating, then so is creatine and everything, because everybody's taking it. You know what I mean? Like you don't have an advantage over other people in a bodybuilding league where everybody's doing it. You know what I mean? Like now, if it were banned and you were sneaking it, then yes, you'd be cheating. Like like let's look at Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco back in the 80s or 90s when there was that big scandal where they were juicing and hitting all these home runs. Yeah, and those types of substances are banned, right? So you've got a whole league full of people who are following the rules, and then they're not following the rules and they're crushing it. They're crushing everybody. You know, Barry Bonds, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Barry Bonds, when he first started, he was like the skinny little black guy, you know what I mean? Next thing you know, he's just absolutely yoked, and he's just crushing the ball, and that's cheating. But as far as like, if you're in America, if you're in, I don't know what they have, and I think they have different leagues in it, but in different countries in Europe, but and then they all kind of coagulate into like the Olympia system. But America, you have the NPC, the National Physique Committee, and the IFBB, the International Federation of Bodybuilders. That league, that circle of influence, everybody's on gear. So if you're going to get into that, and you think you're going to get into that natural, you're just wasting. If you're, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but if you want to do well, if you want to win, if you want to get your IFBB Pro card and get into Olympia, you're probably deluding yourself. You know, there's natural leagues that you can get into if you want to do that. But if you want to be in that league with those people, you're going to have to be on gear, or you're just not going to do well. You're going to get crushed. I guess it depends on the circumstances. Like something like baseball, you know, like those people were cheating, but in bodybuilding, no. I mean, like when you get into bodybuilding, you're either going to have to go natural, or you're going to have to get on gear, or or it's just going to be an expensive hobby. I mean, like you can get in there and get on stage and everything and just enjoy being on stage, you know, because it is kind of a cool feeling and everything. You know, you can just show yourself off, and you can do all these wonderful things, you know, like especially when you're older like me or whatever. If I had the money to do it, maybe I'd still do it, but naturally. But but if you want to compete, then no, that's not cheating, because I mean everybody's doing it.
I totally agree with you. The only thing I would say on that, though, is you can, like you mentioned earlier on, you can clearly see the difference between a natural person and someone who's on TRT, 100%. And the reason why I mentioned that is because half of the people that are in my gym are on TRT, and I can tell you right now, they look better than me. Yeah. Now the reason why I say that is because 6 months ago they looked like shit. 6 months ago they were skinny, they were scrawny, but now 6 months later they come into the gym and they're a lot bigger. You know what I mean? You can see their abs popping. You know what I mean? But you can also see it in the skin, like you mentioned earlier, and you can clearly see the difference in these people's physique. So that's the kind of avenue I was going down. Yeah. I'm not talking about the body, but I'm talking about just in general. A lot of people out there are looking for, because when you look at TRT, we know it's a great way for the body to recover very, very quickly. So you can train as much as you like, pretty much. you can eat as much as you like either. You're not going to gain as much weight as the average person. The average person would have to track macros and do the training and the sleep, and they wouldn't have to train every single day, because we know overtraining can have huge demands on the body. Whereas when someone who's taken TRT, it's completely different. They can get away with this shit. They can actually get away with more stuff than we can't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're going to recover faster, and it's going to allow you to lift more often, recovery faster. You can build more muscle. You know, like typically, naturally, building muscle is not a instant gratification type thing. It's going to, a lot of people ask me all the time, like, how do I look like you? I'm like, train every day for 5 straight years and never stop. You know what I mean? Don't take a week off. Don't take a month off. Every day for 5 years, at least, and then it's kind of funny. Like these people, these trolls on the internet will see like my physique updates, and they'll accuse me of being on TRT, and they insist that, because I'm my age, I can't look the way I do unless I'm taking TRT, and I don't even look that great. You know what I mean? Like as far as like in the context of performance enhancing drugs, you know what I mean? My physique is, if I were taking performance enhancing drugs and I look like that would be mediocre at best. You know what I mean? Like, like my physique is not something that's that unattainable without drugs. This is just 5+ years. Actually, this is 6 solid years of total commitment, going to the gym, never taking off. I did have a year and a half where I was taking TRT, but I didn't really put on that much muscle. I mean, like I put on I think I put on like 35 pounds total from when I started to when I stopped. And then I dropped 20 after I dropped 20 pounds after I stopped taking it.
So let's talk a little bit how we can actually structure this, Stephen, because I have my take on this and you probably have your take on this. Now, my take on this is, as you get older, things have to change. Okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't lift heavy in the gym, but I'm talking about the intensity in those sessions needs to change. You can't get away with training 2 hours a day anymore. That's a fact. Absolute fact. If anything, that's going to tank your testosterone. That's going to run yourself into the ground. That's going to have a massive impact on your energy levels hugely. The diet has to change also. Whether you like it or not, what you used to do in your 20s is not going to work when you're in your 40s or your 50s. Yeah. End of discussion. So the way I structure it is like this. First of all, you go into the gym, you add in some sort of resistance, some sort of progressive overload. I don't care what it is. It can be time under tension, strength training, whatever it is, whatever suits you, you just go and do it. As long as you're getting stronger over a period of time, you're doing okay. Just keep doing it. The next thing we need to focus on, which I think is just as important, and I think you would agree as well, and that's recovery. Recovery is huge. Like, again, when you were younger, you could probably go into the gym and train every single day, and this wouldn't tank your testosterone whatsoever. Whereas when you get older, this shit catches up on you. It really does. Which leads me on to my next point. You need to understand how much you need to do in the gym. Now, do you need to go into the gym? Let's say you're doing the bro split and you're doing, like, say, 20 sets of chest. Do you really need to do 20 sets on the chest?
No,
absolutely not. 100% not. You can actually get away with doing probably 4 to 6. So what I'm saying is you need to strip the volume back to allow your body to make those demands and keep progressing. The next thing we need to look at, okay, is again the diet. What do we need to improve testosterone? We know that it's going to come from fats. We cannot make hormones without fat. It's that simple. So we need to look at, okay, if you put all that in place, the training, the recovery, the sleep, your diet, and you focus on a few other things, if we can nail all that, then how do you know that you're going to have to rely on TRT when you're older? Maybe this is the solution right here. Maybe this is the fountain of youth. Because I can guarantee you, like you, Stephen, I'm doing this. I'm in the same age gap as you, and I feel incredible. Like, there's no stress in my life. I have tons of energy. I feel great. I know I'm getting stronger. I look incredible for my age. So I'm like, why do I need to go down this route? You know, that kind of way. So what's your take on that?
I think, like I said, like a lot of my firefighter comrades, they are on TRT. They took the shortcut route out. Now I think that absolutely there is a place for TRT or hormone replacement therapy. I think it's one of the very few actual pharmaceutical products that actually does anything that it's supposed to do, that actually works. With very, very little on the side effect side, if you don't abuse it, you know what I mean? Like if you're just taking a therapeutic dose of TRT, you're really not going to have side effects for most people. I would say I felt absolutely nothing negative when I was on therapeutic TRT, but I would, like, obviously, as you would agree, I would want people to troubleshoot what's going on in their life first and see if that doesn't fix the problem before they jump right to TRT. And most people jump right to TRT because they don't want to do that. They don't want to get rid of all the crap food that they're addicted to, that they're eating. That's basically that's the foundation right there. Like what they're eating, what they're eating is destroying their testosterone. They're drinking lots of beer or alcohol. They're eating lots of grains and seed oils and inflammatory, substances. I have to always stop myself before I call these things food, because it's not food at all. And they're not eating a lot of animal fats. You know what I mean? They might be eating some eggs and whatnot, but they're probably not eating enough beef or butter or any of these real hormone boosting, hormone foundational fats. You know what I mean? Like Dr. Bright always says, you can't make hormones from coconut oil. You can't make hormones from olive oil. You need fat. You need saturated animal fat and cholesterol. That's your hormones. And there's no cholesterol in plants ever at all. Mm-hmm. So I was, I always say, like, and we were talking about, like, people say, oh, I eat healthy. Like, and I would, most people's idea of healthy is a cultural thing that is a total abomination. Like, there's nothing healthy about most of the things that they're consuming that are called healthy. They're not healthy at all. Like, there's no healthy grains. You know what I mean? Like, beans, legumes are not healthy ever, unless you're starving. You know what I mean? Like, kale is not healthy. Broccoli is not healthy. These are endocrine disrupting nightmares. When you take them over time, they're going right to work on your thyroid, and taxing all kinds of other systems in your body. So, like if I could audit what most of these people are eating, I could probably find the root of their problem right there. And if they were willing to get that out of their life, and then see what happens after that, they may or may not need TRT or hormone replacement therapy. And I'm at that point now with my wife. My wife is going through menopause, and her hormones are just going absolutely bananas. And she's at the point now where she cannot have anything contraindicated at all, where it just goes right to the inflammation and right to the bloat. And and we're trying to figure this out, like, we're just starting the journey relatively recently, and it takes a while for things to work themselves out. That's another thing you have to understand. After Lifetime of abuse, things are not going to return to normal overnight. It could take many, many weeks or months or maybe even years. Yeah. So you have to be patient. You have to trust the process. You have to understand that, if you're eating a species appropriate diet, and it's not working, it's not working because you're not eating carbs. You know what I mean? Like that's, so many people just abandon carnivore because, someone told them their lifestyle wasn't working, and it was usually revolving around the blood panel number. Yeah. So, like, I'm at the point right now where I'm starting to wonder with my wife, like, how long do we do this? And she's still having hormone problems before I start taking her to get some blood work done and figuring out if we need to introduce HR.
Okay. Well, I can give you my take on this, because this is my area. This is what I deal with. I deal with menopause ladies on a regular basis, because I'm actually dealing with this lady at the moment. This lady reached out to me during the week, and she's going through hell at the moment. Her hair is falling now. She's gaining weight. She can't understand why she's gaining weight. And the first thing I asked her was, okay, I need to see some blood work. I need to see your blood work. And the first thing she said to me was, I got my blood work 3 months ago, and my doctors told me they were normal.
Yeah.
Now, how does that make sense?
According
They're
to who,
normal.
on the basis of what?
Exactly. They're normal, but you're getting on the phone to me and you're telling me that you feel like shit.
That's a perfect example in the reverse. You know, like they're telling her she's perfectly fine and she's not. Yeah. Or sometimes you'll feel perfectly fine and your doctor will say, hey, your blood works FUBAR. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like, you know,
and see, that's it. And see, that's the difference between carnivore and on the standard diet. You know how you're going to feel. Like if your numbers are high, like you mentioned, Stephen, if your numbers are high on carnivore and you have like your triglycerides right high, I'm going to ask you the question, how do you feel? If you turn around and say to me, Jesus, I feel great. I'm getting unbelievable sleep. I've got unbelievable energy. I look amazing. What's the problem? Whereas if you had a spoke to this lady that I took on a few days ago, she's in a really, really bad way.
Yeah.
A really, really bad way. Like she's gaining weight for no reason. She can't understand why she's in a calorie deficit and she's gaining weight. She can't understand why she has all these pains. She has all these uncontrollable cravings around food. Her health is turned to shit at the moment. And the only people out there that can help her is the doctors, because the doctors are saying, like, listen, we'll get your blood work done. We'll prove to you there's nothing wrong with you. This is all in your head. This is what I was told. I was told this from her. There's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your heads. This is what I hear every day. Every day.
It's very difficult not to hate these people.
It's honestly, it makes me so angry. And
not your client, but the people who are you know, just gaslighting her about how her health is, you know.
And like you said, Stephen, I had to break it down because she told me this. She got our scans done. She got the blood work done. She had to go and see a dietitian, right? The dietitian didn't even give her a plan. He just gave her like a scan of how much she weighed and her body fat and all that. He said to her, if you want me to give you a diet plan, this is going to charge. I'll have to charge you more. For those 3 things that she got, right? The 3 things, she paid nearly 1,500 quid. 1,500 quid for all this garbage. And she would have to pay an extra 300 quid to get this garbage diet plan. Honestly, the more I kept on listening to her, I was fucking getting pissed off. I was like, listen, I would love to speak to these people. I would love to speak to these people and say, listen, you should never, ever work in this field ever again. You are an absolute disgrace. This woman has been going through this now for 3 months and you haven't helped her once, but you've taken her money off her. Yeah. It's honestly,
we have this discussion every time we talk. We have this discussion about how difficult it is just to be in this, to be awake to this in this reality and have to just watch all of this go on, have to watch all of these quacks and clowns give this horrible, horrible advice and just make people more sick. And then all the people who listen to them, and then all the people who are addicted and just can't get off of it. And they just keep running back to the doctors for the pills and everything because that's what addiction does. It just makes them act irrationally. And they're just praying and hoping that someone can just give them some kind of pill or shot that allows them to keep doing what they're doing and somehow be healthy. You know what I mean? It's very, very difficult to watch. It's very, very frustrating. It is. And you know, it's hard not to feel helpless and powerless. And you just like I've been a coach now for probably like 6 months, and I haven't had a single client yet because, you know, like do you think that's down to what you do for do you think that's down to because you're actually coaching the carnivore diet, or is that just because you feel like you're not doing enough on social media? Could be. It could be I'm terrible at social media. I'm really, really terrible. I'm Gen X, and I really, really have a hard time giving a crap about like my numbers, my statistics, and my you know, like putting out content. You know, like someone told me I needed to join TikTok if I wanted clients, and I just cannot bring myself to join TikTok. And start obsessing over that type of content. But I think especially like in my local market with people that I actually know, they are terrified of the carnivore diet. They are terrified I'm going to tell them they cannot have their favorite candies and beignets and all of the southern slop that they eat, I can't even remember, like gumbo and all of the fried foods and the biscuits that they eat every single day, and they're just all horribly metabolically diseased. I walk into Walmart and literally everybody is just walking sickness. So it's a really hard. It's really hard to sell people, especially in our culture where, like everybody, like I see this big thing now where like everybody in the establishment is blaming metabolic disease on a caloric excess. Like you're just metabolically diseased because you're eating too many calories.
Yeah,
and basically what they're saying is if you want to be less sick, eat less of what you're eating and you'll be okay. And I hear people like me come, and you and I come along and say that you cannot eat less of what made you fat and sick and become healthy. It's not going to happen ever.
But this is what frustrates me about the industry, because everybody throws out this term about insulin resistance. Everybody talks about insulin resistance, but nobody ever talks about the root cause. Nobody ever talks about, okay, why are these people these people obese in the first place? Why are these people at type 2? You can't just keep on blaming these genetics down to insulin resistance. You can't just keep on throwing out this word, insulin resistance. You need to talk about why this is happening in the first place.
There's actually been a very huge, like almost like coordinated movement to blame insulin resistance on animal fats, on saturated fat.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
They're just like, oh, it's the saturated fat, and I believe it's a misunderstanding of the Randall cycle, because if you are eating a lot of fat and a lot of sugar, the fat will pool up in your cells while the cell is utilizing glucose as its primary substrate. So they'll say that's why. And then like if you're eating more glucose than the body can use for ATP production, then the sugar gets blocked out of the cell and into the blood. And while there's fat pooling up in the cell, and then they'll say that's why the sugar is in your blood and not being utilized. I actually saw what was the Emmerichs did a video recently on this, saying that they see it all the time. Their clients are coming in and they went carnivore and became diabetic, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it's so frustrating that even people in our sphere are saying that people are becoming diabetic eating too much fat. You know what I mean? Like fat doesn't touch your insulin, doesn't touch it.
Well, as you know, I actually sent Craig an email on this, and it was a big email. I explained the whole thing, and I said, listen, I need to get you on my podcast because I don't agree with this. I don't think you're right on this. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to come down hard on you, but I'd like people to hear both sides of the argument. So that's why I was asking them, okay, come on, and we'll have a chat about this. And everything was going really, really well.
Oh dear.
I'll just keep telling you. I was just saying, I brought Craig in, and everything was going really, really well. Yeah. So basically, what I was saying about Craig, I as you know, I emailed Craig a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned that I saw this on one of his videos, and I was like, listen, I need to speak to you about this. I don't think this is right. I don't think this is the right way to say to people that if you go on the carnivore diet, you're gonna become a diabetic. I think it's absolute nonsense. I agree with you that too much fat in the diet, which we'll talk about shortly, you can gain weight, because I actually did a video on this the other day when Ivy put up his video. But when it comes to diabetes, it's just ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. I mean, this is what we're talking about, the blood work. This is why it's not a reliable source. Correlation does not mean causation. And this is where we're going at the moment. We're just looking at numbers when we're not looking at real evidence here.
Yeah, and they didn't even give numbers. They were just like, oh, this went up or this doubled, and there was no context whatsoever. It was just like, it was very suspicious that there was no actual like this person's glucose doubled, like from what to what and from when to when. You know what I mean? Like and there was no context of what they were actually eating. You know what I mean? Like it was just all just like empty kind of claims. And again, it's all according to who, on the basis of what. And if you're talking about like HbA1c, and that's another great thing to get into as far as like diabetes goes and everything. Like pre-diabetes is a made up term. They just made it up. It has there's no clinical like when you there's a way to look at diabetes where you could say this person's diabetic, and it's not really subjective or arbitrary. It's called the renal threshold. That's when you have so much sugar in your blood that your kidneys start pumping it out into your urine. So you'll have sugar in your urine. And I believe that used to be the original that was the original diagnosis of diabetes. If you were peeing out sugar, your blood sugar was chronically high and you were diabetic. Whereas like pre-diabetes, there's no way that they just like, they just say, if your HbA1c is 5.8 or higher, you're pre-diabetic. But, and that's completely without context as well. As a matter of fact, the last time I had my blood work done a couple of weeks ago, my HbA1c was 5.8. And she's like, you're pre-diabetic. And I'm like, and it was frustrating because I was talking with a representative for Dr. Axe, and for some reason I thought he was like somewhat, not a total quack, but she's trying to tell me I'm pre-diabetic, and I'm like, and she didn't even know about how like people who are on a low to zero carb diet so your HbA1c is based on an average lifespan of your red blood cells. So if your average lifespan is like 160 days or 120 days, and then your glycation rate is this, that, but if you're low to zero carb, like we are, your red blood cells
exactly, they're living longer. Yeah, they're living a lot longer.
High rate of glycation. So your HbA1c levels might go up. And that's another thing that people get freaked out about. It. Like your doctor tells them, your HbA1c went up. You're pre-diabetic. And they're like, oh my God, I got to eat some carbs. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? So, and she didn't even know that, she had no context of that. She just looked at me like a deer, trapped in the headlights. And I was like, oh, this is going to go well. And then, she got into how my LDL is too high. My ApoB is too high. And I was like, all right, great. And then she tried to sell me on a nutritional coaching plan, which was absolutely hilarious. But, it goes back to the blood tests and the poor way that they're interpreted by people who don't understand context and nuance. The normative ranges on these blood panels are basically the average in a population, first of all, who is eating 40 to 60% carbohydrates in their diet, and also who are severely metabolically ill. In America, 93% of the population has at least one metabolic disorder, whether it's hypertension or obesity or being overweight, diabetic or whatever. And they probably throw pre-diabetes into that too, which probably skews the number. But if you walk around in America and just observe people, you can see most people are not doing well. And those are the people where the averages are formed through, like you're being judged in context with a population who is very, very ill, and you are not. So, and then people they just listen to them. And the frustrating thing again is that most people know that your lipid panel is not going to give you a very good indication of whether or not you're going to have heart disease, because it's not really contextual. Like, there's no causal role in your lipids in heart disease, and they know this, but then their same doctor will tell them they'll be like, oh, they're not worried about their doctor telling them their LDL is too high, but then they tell them their T3 is too low and they freak out. Their HbA1c is too high and they freak out. I'm like, think. I'm like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, people still, it's a cultural thing where people still worship the white coat because that's what they've been taught their entire lives. Like, doctors want to help you. Doctors know, they know everything. And you know nothing, so listen to them. But then to hear that from the Emmerichs, and I never really took them too seriously anyway, because she was all about like the protein sparing and all that, and she doesn't look healthy at all. I'm sorry to say, she looks she's not a very good example of what a healthy carnivore looks like. She looks very, very malnourished to me, and he doesn't look so great either. You know what I mean? Like, sorry.
And see, that's the thing. I've always said this. You can look amazing. You can look absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But if you're not healthy, there's gonna be a problem there.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a problem there eventually. It's only a matter of time. And these carnivores that we know, these carnivore influencers that are bringing these carbohydrates in, this shit is gonna catch up on you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you are. You're not this magic person. You're far from it. This is going to catch up on you. I don't care how insulin sensitive you are. And this is what really frustrates me, is that when we become insulin sensitive, this is an excuse to add back in these carbohydrates. Absolute horse shit. If it was the problem in the first place, why are you adding it back in again? It just does not make sense to me. You're adding it back in because you were always addicted to these foods. That's the reason, plain and simple. Because I can tell you now, I haven't had a carbohydrate in 6 years. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want in my diet is carbohydrates. I don't miss them at all. At all. Yeah. And I'm not even tempted. I'm not tempted one bit. When I go out, now, if you had spoke to me 7 years ago, the smell of carbohydrates would have set me off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I couldn't walk past a bakery without walking into the shop and buying something.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad it was for me. It was really, really bad. Now I couldn't care less.
And it smells absolutely awful.
Yeah.
One time we were driving. My wife and I were driving from a concert, and we stopped at this truck stop. It's like a chain of truck stop, massive mega stations. You know, like it's called Buc-ee's. So a lot of your listeners in America probably know what a Buc-ee's is. But I was waiting outside of the bathroom for my wife to come out. And I was standing next to the fudge counter. They have this big counter where they cut fudge for people. And I was just like, and I used to smash fudge in my face. I used to love it so much. And then just the smell of it was just like, ugh, it just smells awful. And I think that's probably like hormonal, and it's probably like has to do with your microbiome too. Like, you know, like when your microbiome is adjusted to just eating massive amounts of sugar, that probably smells absolutely incredible to you, and you can't resist it. But now that my microbiome is adjusted to eating zero carbs, literally everything carbohydrate based looks and smells absolutely horrid to me. Like I can't even be in the vicinity of a fast food restaurant because the smell of that rancid seed oil that I used to smell that and just be like, oh my God, give me. Or like a fried chicken joint, like we have Popeyes around here, or you know, any kind of local fried chicken or fried anything joint. Like the smell of fried food used to just set me off, and now it just turns my stomach.
Yeah.
So
I want to bring Victoria in now because I want to change this around now because
cool.
We're going to talk about fat now. Okay, so there's a lot of people in the carnivore community that will convince everybody that if you just eat a good amount of fat, you will lose weight. This is what we've been told. Forget about tracking stuff here. It's just eat as much as you like.
Yeah.
Now, in a way, I can understand what they're saying, because when we add in more fat to the diet, it cuts off the hunger. It manages cravings. So when it comes to managing weight loss, I'm all for it. The issue I have is this: if you are consuming too much energy, calories, fuel, this is where we're going at the moment. You are going to create a problem. I don't give a shit. Too much energy in the body is going to cause a problem, whether it's carbohydrates or it's fats. It's an absolute fact. I've seen it so many times. Many people come to me and they're like, I'm on the carnivore diet. Everything worked really, really well for the first 4 months. I was healing. I was losing weight. But now after 4 months, the weight is stalled. And these people are convinced that they need to add more carbohydrates in. But then when you look at the fat ratios between fat and protein, their fat intake is way too high. Like way too high. You're talking about nearly 80% of their overall food intake is coming from fat. And they're eating very, very minimal protein. Very, very minimal. I've had women come to me and saying to me, I'm eating 60 grams of protein a day. 60 grams of protein a day. And I'm like, do you not realize that the most important macronutrient your body needs is not fat? It's actually protein. But it's protein. It's like, You can't convince me any other way. Fat in a way is good, but it's nowhere near as important as protein.
Yeah.
So I think we need to understand that fat in the diet is good. It has massive benefits. It can help you heal the body. It can get the hormones back functioning the way they should be. But when it comes to you reaching your goal to lose weight, there will become a point when things are going to stall and you might need to titrate macros. And at the end of the day, if you bring your fat down and it continues your journey, and you are losing weight and you are getting the results that you want, nobody in the carnivore space can tell you that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody. In fact, just one more, Victoria, sorry. And the reason why I mention that is because I know Barkay did this in the past. Barkay, I think he ate like over 6,000. He experimented this himself, where he was eating over 6,000 calories of proteins and fats, and he lost an awful lot of weight. I know Nick did this as well, but we need to understand this. I'm not saying these people are liars. I'm just saying that not everybody is the same as these people.
Yeah.
And you need to find what works best for you. And if it requires you lowering your fat intake and you get the results that you want, like I said, nobody in the carnivore community can ever tell you you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, well, I know, I like to say I'm all about balance, and I get a lot of pushback from people about tracking a macro, but I think it's the only thing that's going to give you a picture of where you are and what's working for you. If you're doing the 80-20 thing of fat to protein and you stop losing weight, then you need to, as Mark said, titrate your macros, work with them, and lower one or the other. The whole deal with the Nick Norwitz this week was he went on a very high fat diet and he named a hormone, I think F24 something, and he found that he lost weight by consuming massive amounts of fat instead of eating a normal amount of protein. His usual amount of protein is 18%, which is kind of on the low side, but he went to 9% of protein, which is ridiculously low. And Mark and I both agree that he lost 6.4 pounds. He doesn't need to lose any weight.
But that was muscle. I'm pretty sure that was
He
muscle.
lost muscle. Absolutely. There's no way that anyone can say he did not lose muscle, because that's in fact what we are convinced happened to him. And I've written to him, and I don't know if I'll ever hear from him, but he didn't tell us that he tracked his musculature, because he wrote last week, he wrote on the sugar diet, and there was data about people losing muscle or gaining or retaining muscle. There was a tracking of that, but he did no such thing, as far as I can tell, from reading what's publicly available from his experiment, that he did not lose muscle.
Can I just add one more point in, Stephen, before you jump in? Sorry. I mean, this is what I did years ago. I did this when I entered my bodybuilding. This was the first bodybuilding competition I ever did. And I made the decision when I entered that competition, 6 weeks out from the show, my fat intake is going to be very, very high, like really, really high. About 65, maybe 80% of my overall intake was coming from fats. And I was eating very, very minimal protein leading into that show. Now, the reason why I did that is because I was very, very lean, my priority wasn't to build muscle. My priority was to be the leanest man on the stage, but not jeopardize my health. That was the reason why. So when I stepped on stage, I was 3% body fat. I was shredded. Absolute, probably the best condition I've ever had in my life. Unbelievable. When I look at my macros, like I said, I was eating a lot of fats, but I can guarantee it. When I did that, I lost muscle. I lost muscle during that time. 100% I did, because my protein was very, very low. And I did that about 4 to 6 weeks out from the show. I made sure after that show was finished and I impressed the judges, I got back to, I was like, okay, the fats are coming down, the protein's going back up. Now, I did that over a period of time. This is why the reverse diet is very, very important.
Reverse diet, yep.
Yeah, I did this over a period of time. I didn't just go from the amount of food that I was on and then bumped it straight up to maintenance. Now, I had to do this at the right pace. So to come out of a reverse diet, I had to do this over a 3-month period to do it the right way. If I had done what everybody else does and just gets very, very lean and then just messes it up, pretty much they go out and they just pig out and they eat shite and all this crap. They put all this water away. That's not what I did. I made sure if I dieted for like 3 months to get to where I needed to be, I needed to do the same time to get me out of that. I need to do 3 months. And I believe that the reverse diet is a lot harder than getting in shape. A lot harder.
Yeah, after my contest, after the prejudging, you had the prejudging and then the finals. When the prejudging was over, they would stock the entire room that we waited back, the backstage. They would stock it with pizza and brownies and all kinds of garbage, and everybody just shoved it in their face. And I had like a ribeye in my bag I ate when I was done. But I don't know much about this particular Nick Norwitz experiment. I don't really think Nick Norwitz, I'm sure he's a great guy and everything. He's not somebody that anybody should take seriously, in my opinion. But if this wasn't accompanied by a DEXA type scan or anything like that, where like you knew what the exact body composition was during throughout and before and after and all that, then it's not really anything. Because losing weight, people lost weight on the sugar diet. What kind of weight did they lose? People lose weight on Ozempic, and we know where all these GLP-1 inhibitors and all these quack shots that people are taking. We know that a lot of the weight people are losing is bone density and lean muscle mass, which you absolutely do not want to do. That's catastrophically bad. Like all people care about because of this cultural programming is the scale weight. I'm like, I'm losing weight. I'm like, you can cut a limb off, and you can lose some weight. You can cut your hair, lose weight. You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of ways to lose weight. Why would you ever want to lose weight? You want to lose fat. Mm-hmm. So in terms of your diet, your macro ratios and everything, this is a very interesting subject. And I've been struggling with this for me personally. And then as like what to tell people as a coach. I don't want to say I'm struggling, but I'm like, it's very interesting. And I'm still trying to figure things out, because initially, when I started diving into this whole rabbit hole of how much fat you should have, the first person to talk about it that I remember was Anthony Shafee. And Anthony Shafee says that every day you produce a certain amount of bile, and then every time you eat fat, you release bile to process the fat. And then when the bile is gone for the day, all the fat that you eat just goes to your stool. So I'm like, cool. So I started adding like I love smoked everything. So I made a batch of homemade tallow, and then I smoked it, and I was putting like a tablespoon or two of it in my breakfast every morning. It was absolutely amazing. I mean, and then I was getting puffy. I was getting sloppy. And so I'm like, this whole idea that fat doesn't make you fat is absolutely erroneous. It will make you fat if you do it incorrectly. And then comes the whole issue of whether it's a solid fat or a rendered fat, because apparently if you consume a lot of rendered liquid fat, it will bypass the process where the bile starts processing it and go straight into your bloodstream, or I don't really know what the process is like. And I don't really know exactly what's happening. Like I asked this question to Coach Stephen Thomas when he was on a live with Bart K. I asked him, what's the difference between rendered fat and non-rendered fat? And, that was basically the explanation that I was given, that it bypasses the bile. The bile can't get to it before it's in the bloodstream or whatever, something like that. And he would say, our ancestors, when they cooked meat, the rendered fat would just fall into the fire and they would just eat the meat. So I'm starting to wonder if a high fat diet is appropriate, but it depends on what kind of fat you're eating. You should definitely, almost everybody, I believe, and I could find out to be wrong about this, but I think everybody should be consuming fatty red or meat, fatty ruminant meat. Like you don't want to, like, I'm not saying don't eat sirloin every once in a while, but you should be eating ruminant meat that is high in fat. And that doesn't mean, so the problem that arises for a lot of people is someone like me adding like a lot of tallow to their diet, or someone who might be like, someone might get into carnivore following Bella, the steak and butter gal, and that girl is just chewing on sticks of butter all day. That works for her. Obviously, she doesn't have, I mean, she is very, very lean and she looks fabulous and it works for her. That is not going to work for everybody. So it's very, very individual specific. You have to pay attention to what you're doing and find out how that's affected to you. So if you're eating a lot of rendered fat or a lot of liquid fat, like I love, like I don't eat sticks of butter. That might be different than me putting butter in my scrambled eggs because it melts. You know what I mean? Like, so all of these different things you have to really look at. You have to, you can't just say I'm on a carnivore diet and it's not working. You have to really, really audit what's going on, exactly what they're eating, and figure out, like exactly how much fat they're eating, exactly how much protein they're eating. But I feel like if you're eating, like if you just ate ribeyes and added some eggs, you're probably getting an appropriate fat to protein ratio. It's probably not going to be too high for you. I mean, particularly because it's a solid fat for one thing, but again, like it might not work. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going to work for some people. You have to be involved. You have to be proactive, and you have to make observations and collect data and make sure that, if they're not making progress, then the fat is, but too much protein also could be a problem because it's going to create gluconeogenesis, which, the body will convert sugar into fat, into triglycerides. So that could also be a problem. You have to be involved as a coach, or if you don't have a coach and you're just trying to do this on your own, you have to be involved. You have to be observing and making adjustments based on those observations.
100%. I'll give you an example. Like when I've spoken about this a few times. When I competed on stage 6 years ago, I think I was consuming, I don't know, maybe around 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds of red meat a day, something like that. About 6 weeks out from the show, I can tell you right now, my consumption now is way higher, but my protein intake has always been the same. So I only weigh about 150, about 140, 150 pounds. Between 150 and 200 grams of protein for my body is enough. I don't need any more than that. So for me, in order for me to keep on progressing and to look bigger and look stronger, I'm not going to go near the carbohydrates. I'm going to add in more fat. Now, once my body adapts to the amount of fat that I'm consuming, it's a good thing, because I can tell you now, I consume a lot of fat, a lot of it. And that's the best part about my meals, is that when I'm putting a big blob of beef tallow into the pan and then I'm cooking it like with extra beef, with extra fat on it, my body is able to do that because I've done that over a period of time. It didn't happen overnight. I did this over a 6-year period. So if we're going by calories here, I can tell you now, I'm taking in probably over maybe 4.5 a day, easily, and I'm not gaining weight. But that's not to say that what I'm doing is going to work for you. You need to start at the very, very beginning, And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is when I work with clients. Let's say a person comes to me and they weigh 160 pounds. I'm going to give them a 1-to-1 ratio to start off with. 160 gram protein, 160 gram fat. That's it. Now, all I need to do then is watch these people on a week-to-week basis. If they're losing weight, the macros stay the exact same. Don't change nothing. Yeah? If they're not losing weight, it's very, very simple. Just titrate one of the macros. It's either protein or fat. More than likely, the fat comes down. Because why would you decrease their protein? Their protein intake is for their body type. If they weigh 160, why would you bring the protein down? If anything, you want to keep the protein up.
Yeah.
Because at this stage, they're building muscle. You don't want them losing weight. You want them building muscle. You're trying to improve their body composition. So the lever that I always push is the fat. The fat comes down. So usually this is where I see the biggest progress. Let's say they start off at 160 and they want to get in the best shape of their life. I always see that a drop between 50 and 60 grams of fat over a period of time. This is what gets people amazing results. And they're still fat adapted, and they still have loads of energy, Sorry, go ahead, Victoria.
Well, I'm give my personal testimony. Around December, Mark and I had a conversation about the amount of fat that I was eating, and he told me to tone it down a bit. So I went to the recommendation from Bart K, which is 60% fat and 40% protein, because I had been at 75-25, and I lost 10 pounds. I did. I went from 150 to 140, and I forgot to tell him. But it actually worked in a matter of 2 months. I've lost 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. I'm never gonna go up against Barkay. Barkay is like he's the master. But I just feel that when it comes to like getting in amazing shape, I know this area better than anybody on social media, in my
It's
opinion.
just a reference point, and it just kind of, I mean, that for me right now, it's 132 grams of protein and 88 grams of fat. So it's just kind of a tweaking, and that's what when I said track your macros, and Steven said you got to follow your data. It's important to know what you're doing, to see it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Stephen will know this. When you're going into a show, you have to track every single macro. Every macro. Everything has to be perfect. I just don't understand why we're convincing people that this carnivore diet is this magic diet. You just need to go on the carnivore diet and you will magically lose weight. Yes, you will at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
No, but we need to understand what you're losing. You're losing inflammation. You're losing water weight. It's not body fat. There's gonna come a time when all that inflammation's gone out of your body. Your body is not retaining any more water. Then what are you gonna do? Are you gonna say, okay, the carnivore diet doesn't work anymore, and I'm gonna add the carbohydrates back in? Because this is what the community will say. The fitness community will say, I told you so. I told you so that the carnivore diet, it doesn't work long term. It doesn't work long term because you've been educated incorrectly. That's the reason why. You need to get a coach that understands this, that understands both, that the carnivore diet can heal you. We know how to do that, but you need to get a coach that understands how to get in amazing shape. And that's the difference.
The wrong coach will send you in the wrong direction. I have a group where I do diet coaching, free coaching, and some guy posted that he was on carnivore for 2 years and everything was fine. And all of a sudden his LDL and his APOB went up, and his doctor, who claims to also be a carnivore, had him go back on olive oil and lean meats to get his LDL and APOB down. Now, first off, that's totally unnecessary. Secondly, he's ignoring the type of cholesterol particles he's had. So I recommended an NMR lipoprotein profile. And also, he's not looking at his triglycerides to HDL at all, which is much more significant than your total cholesterol. So you can get bad information from someone who claims that they know what they're doing on carnivore.
Mm.
Yeah, the last blood panel I had, the lady didn't even give me my HDL to triglyceride ratio, which I was absolutely shocked. She told me my triglycerides, but the panel didn't even give me my HDL. It was all LDL and VLDL and ApoB and all that.
But they can't deny it. They know that it's true. They learn that in school. I've had doctors tell me, oh, yeah, I remember learning that. Well, how about it?
You can't sell statins. That's all they care about,
Exactly.
That's the funny thing. The funny thing is the first blood panel I got, the clinicians, they sell drugs. They sell everything. They sell drugs. He tells me my LDL was 270. He tells me your LDL is way too high. We got to stop you eating this red meat and eggs, or I got to put you on a statin. And then the second time I had a blood test done, this was just at a regular. I just think they took blood and sent it off and then gave you the results. They didn't prescribe drugs. So I just got the results back and they said, all right, bye-bye. And nobody, there was no like, oh, this is a problem. That's a problem. We got, do you want to get on drugs or whatever? So it's very interesting. So I just think with the fat, like you just have to, and the thing about losing weight initially and all of that, people really need to understand that, like, losing fat is a process of actually healing. You're not just looking better. You are like the fat is a metabolic symptom of much deeper disorders going on. Like, it's just one symptom. If you're overweight, you almost certainly have multiple dysfunctions going on, and it doesn't heal overnight, and it doesn't heal the way you want it to heal. You might want to lose weight or lose fat, but your hormones, your thyroid and your endocrine system is all jacked up from eating garbage for decades and decades, and you need proper hormone function to lose weight, to lose fat. You can't lose fat, if your hormones are all jacked up. You need glucagon, and your insulin has to be properly regulated, and all of the, you're not going to lose fat unless all of that is healed and in proper balance. So when things aren't happening the way you want to, your body might just be saying, hey, slow down, hold on a second. I got to do this first, for one thing. So, and then people just don't, and then too many people, I say this all the time, I probably already said it in this talk, too many people enter carnivore as a tool or a hack or some kind of dietary intervention. I'm going to see if it works. And then if it doesn't work, then I'll just go back to eating carbohydrates. And they don't understand that the reason it works when it works is because it's your species appropriate diet and lifestyle. And they don't put that into context with the fact that they're healing, and they might have to do things quite differently during that healing process than someone like me. Like I don't know if I'm fully healed from a lifetime of abuse, but I've been on this journey for off and on for 13 years now. And I've been fully strict. When I went carnivore in 2023, that was it. Like, there was no more carbs. There was no more cheating. I didn't grab a piece of cake here and there. I didn't fall off the wagon, for a few weeks and then jump back on. I've been hard freaking core since then. You know what I mean? So I might be, pretty well advanced in my healing, where I don't have to worry about, if I should be eating this or that, or too much fat, that much, or too little fat, or if I should have pork or chicken or whatnot. Some people need to be fully line diet before they can heal. Look at Michaela Peterson. I think she was line diet for 8 years before she finally said, I think I can have some sweet potatoes now, and I wish her all the luck in the world. She's going to have a hard time with that, I have a feeling, but
yeah, I think so too.
So you have to understand that, just losing fat or losing weight that you're trying to, that's part of a long-term healing process that you're going to have to go through. And you're going to have to, especially while you're going through the healing, your body's going to change. Your body might change its requirements. I mean, like you might go from just the right amount of fat to now your fat's too high, or you might have been eating lower fat and now suddenly you need to be higher fat. You have to be paying attention and observing. And going back to carbohydrates is never, ever, ever going to be the solution. So figure it out. Figure something else out. What could I do differently now? And just because it was working before and then it stops working doesn't mean that it just stopped working. It just might need you need to adapt and adjust.
Exactly, that's the word. Adapt.
Yeah, I mean, we could honestly we could do another hour on this, but I want to be respectful of your time, Steve. But yeah, 100%. Like, I think the main people, when you mention healing, I think this is extremely important, because a lot of people don't realize that when you go into the carnivore diet, you've got a problem. You've got an addiction problem, because you'll hear this all the time. I always mention this to people on sales calls. I always ask the same question: why couldn't you not stick to a diet? And every one of them always say to me, I was always hungry. I was always miserable. Always. I get these answers all the time. And then I'm like, okay, well, the reason why you're hungry is because you have an addiction problem. This is a hormonal problem. This has got nothing to do with calories. Absolutely. I'm not going to put you on a calorie deficit. And they're like, what do you mean you're not going to put me on a calorie deficit? I want to lose weight. And I'm like, listen, we're not losing weight at the beginning. If you want to lose weight at the very, very beginning, you're with the wrong person. You're with the wrong person. We have to heal first. You've got a problem with food. You've got a bad relationship with food. You need to heal. And then when I explain to them the reasons why they need to do it, they understand it a little bit more, because they know once the healing process is over, their life is going to change. It's going to get so much easier. They're going to lose the weight. They're going to feel incredible. They're never going to have to worry about their weight ever again, ever. And it's so important. So I'm going to leave the final word to you, Stephen. Okay. How do we get fat in the first place? Just in a short answer, how does it happen in the first place?
By and large, you are going to get fat. And I mean, I'm talking about overweight / obese from chronically activating the Randall cycle, basically. Because there are people, everybody says carbs will make you fat. There are people who are very, very high carb and very, very lean. And we talk about bodybuilding all the time. If you follow a bodybuilder, like their YouTube, like what I eat in a day and everything, those people are eating massive amounts of carbs and they are shredded. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to, and then people of course lost weight on sugar diets. So you know what I mean? Like, so, and any kind of restriction diet people do, people tend to lose weight. Nick Norwitz ate a bunch of fat, lost weight, whatever. But I think the primary issue when it comes to gaining weight and becoming fat is you are chronically activating your Randall cycle. Randall cycle has a place in our ancestral kind of mechanics. In the late summer, early fall, typically there would be a whole bunch of fruit available, and you would find it and you would consume it, and you would be eating high fats, and then you'd be eating the sugar that's in the fruits, and you're activating your Randall cycle, and you're putting on a little bit of extra fat for the winter to get you through. That's kind of like an ancestral mechanism where the Randall cycle is useful. But in our modern society, we don't have that type of cycle anymore, where the fruit's not available except for certain times of the year. The fruit is available and the carbs are available constantly, persistently, everywhere. It's on every shelf in every store, on every corner in my country, especially. So when you're eating a high fat diet, Randall cycle is high fat and high protein, or high fat and high carbs. I'm sorry. And the enzymes that bring those nutrients to the mitochondria to create ATP cross inhibit each other. So when that happens, first of all, you get it's an inflammatory process. Because you get an increase in inorganic phosphate, which causes it to release inflammatory cytokines. So it's very, very inflammatory. Picture a highway where, I don't mean to talk too much about this, but it's very important. Picture you're on an interstate highway in America, or whatever type of highway you have in Europe, and then another highway or interstate merges with that interstate or highway or whatever. The traffic gets bogged down and slows down. And that's exactly what happens when you activate the Randall cycle, because when your body will not use both substrates at the same time. It's going to use fat or it's going to use sugar. It cannot use both. Mm-hmm. So the enzymes cross inhibit each other, and it slows down your mitochondria. It bogs it down. And then you get the inorganic phosphate that is highly inflammatory. And then typically the sugar will get blocked out of the cell because the glycation is much more damaging inside a normal cell than it is in the blood. The mechanisms, the endothelium in the blood, the cholesterol, and all the anti-inflammatory substances in the blood allow for a better, those mechanisms and cells and whatnot to handle glycation better. So they keep the sugar in the bloodstream where it can, where the damage can be mitigated easier. And then the insulin comes in and turns that sugar into triglycerides. And the triglycerides are basically pockets of fat that are to be stored. They don't have any other function. They're going to store triglycerides. They get into the adipose tissue, and that builds up over time. And when your insulin is high constantly, you cannot get rid of that fat, because the insulin is a storage hormone, and it blocks the hormones that will be activated to tell the adipose tissues to release the triglycerides, break it down into the substrates, break it down into glycerol, and break it down into the fatty acids so it can go to the cell and be used. Like, insulin blocks that process. Mm-hmm. So not only is the insulin storing the fat, but the insulin is blocking you from utilizing the stored fat that you have for energy. So that process over many, many years, typically, I mean, you can get fat, eating a whole bunch of carbs and whatnot, but typically the easiest and quickest way to become overweight and obese is to chronically keep that Randall cycle activated, so where you're constantly, your metabolism is bogged down. You don't have the energy you should, and you're inflamed. It's very, very inflammatory. So the inflammation keeps you inflamed and sick, and you are constantly storing that rather than utilizing it as a substrate for energy. So that's
absolutely
a long story there.
No, well, honestly, well said, Stephen. Well said. Beautifully said. Where can people go to find you, Stephen?
I am Coach Carnivore Carnivore Coach Invictus on Instagram, and Carnivore Invictus on YouTube. And my name is Stephen Curtain, Curtin. You can also search me on those. I don't know if you can search me on YouTube by my name, but you could probably search me by my name on Instagram. But Carnivore Coach Invictus on Instagram will probably find me as well.
Good stuff. And you're available for coaching also?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am ready. I am fully armed and operational.
Well, hopefully after today we can get you 1 or 2 clients, and you can make a difference to the world, because your content is amazing.
Thanks,
absolutely amazing. We just need to see more of you on social media, Steve. That's all we need. We need to see more of you on social media.
Yes.
Like you have a wealth of knowledge, and I mean, we need more people like yourself on social media, because, as I said, you're making a massive difference. So I wish you all the best, buddy. As I said, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast.
Always good talking to you. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks for watching.
Great information. Thank you.